So today we're going to talk about Orla Kiely. She's well known around the world as one of the best designers of Ireland. She's also well known by a British newspaper called The Guardian, who gave her the name of the Queen of Prince. She was born in 1963 here in Ireland and grew up taking inspiration from her mother and grandmother about their glamorous fashion and style. Growing up, she wanted to become an architect, but she changed her mind as she really loved fashion and wanted to take that career path. She went to the NCAD, the National College of Art and Design, and studied textiles, but there wasn't many career opportunities here in Ireland, so that made her decide to move to New York. There was various different experience there, using colours, patterns, but her number one favourite was the patterns. And her experience in New York and her work experience there gave her various different opportunities. She worked in paper, in print, in design, in photography, and fabrics. She worked with all these, and when her best friend decided to move to London, she wasn't really sure what to do. But she came up with the idea that when she would move to London, she would study her Masters in the Royal College of Art. While she was studying there, she focused on hats. When she finished her Masters, she had an exhibition at Harrods. And they loved her exhibition so much, they decided to buy it from her. And they still have it there to this day. When she finished her Masters in London College, she wanted to continue on her experience, and a lot of businesses were interested in her work and designs, such as London Bus. They would wish for her to do some decal work, along with books, water bottles, designs for sheets, cushions, and other home furnishing, along with car designs, and so on. And that made her extremely busy in work. And her home was very, very crazy, with her working a lot of hours. And her husband and her didn't have a lot of studio space. So they decided that they would start looking for some studio space. And then she officially opened her business in 1995. The business continued on from there, and they wanted to expand. Orla made her debut at London Fashion Week, but her father encouraged her to stop focusing on hats, as they weren't as prominent and popular in society at the moment. He recommended that she try and focus on handbags, as they were more popular at that time. Chloe agreed, and they started making the handbags. She loved to use the laminated type of fabric like an oil tablecloth. She loved how easy it was to design, and thought, why not use the same fabric to make her purses and cut it into the shape of handbags, as back then nobody was using that type of fabric to make their purses. It was a very brave move, and at London Fashion Week she debuted her laminated handbags. It made her very popular at the time, and was a very successful move. She set up her own name, and really from there she became world renowned, especially in home furnishing, and her website was set up along with 3 stores around the world, in London, New York and Kildare. Unfortunately, they closed 2 years ago. This is due to clothes shops becoming less and less popular for people to go into. It's moved towards online shopping now. Her ideas and her interests are from the 1950s, 60s and 70s era. Her graphic designs and patterns are very important to her, a very simple shape of bold colours and comparisons to the neon, and her love of that. She takes those ideas from natural simple things like leaves and repeats the pattern again and again and again. She's well known for that iconic design now. As well as that, a lot of famous people have worn her clothes, such as Alexa Chung, who's a TV presenter, Kristen Dunst, who's an actress, Sarah Jessica Parker, who is also an actress, and from the royal family, Prince William's wife, Kate Middleton, the Duchess of Cambridge, has worn her clothes as well. So her name has become quite widespread and world-renowned. She's one of the top Irish fashion designers, and she also has a stamp with her name and design on it. At this time, she's worth $10 million for her well-known clothing design and website, and her business is still continuing on at this day. So of course she is Irish, but now she's living in London, and she's married with her 2 sons, and she loves London. But maybe one day she'll move back home here to Ireland. She's always flying back between Ireland and London, but for now, London has plenty of work for her, and she loves it there and loves her life there. Today we're going to talk about Chloe Early. She was born in the 1980s in London, but she grew up in Cork, Ireland. She went to the National College of Art and Design, where she studied painting. In 2003, she finished her degree and has continued painting since then. Now she lives in London with her husband, Conor Harrington, as well. He is also an artist and he does a lot of mural work. They also live with their son. Chloe has many exhibitions around the world in New York, London, LA and Dublin. Her focus on painting is on 2 areas. The first is of the romanticism, meaning the romantic, and it's from the 1700 paintings. But before the 1700s, when people were painting, they would paint still figures with no facial expressions or emotions. And then after the 1700s, they began changing little by little, so they could have emotions and facial expressions in their pictures. And Chloe was interested in that. Her second area was the Renaissance paintings. And she felt in the 14th to 16th century that those paintings were fabulous, but they were dying art. It had disappeared since then, and she wanted to bring it back. Those ideas, those beautiful faces, the perfect bodies and shapes, that style, or even the sculptures, that classicism that was named from the Renaissance. And Chloe loved that facial expression and emotions and the perfect bodies and shapes, that idea. And she used that in her paintings. A lot of metaphors were used, like pleasure, pain, agony, ecstasy. And she used a lot of emotions in her paintings. She used a lot of oil paintings on linen or aluminum panels, such as metal. She used figures to show a lot of movement, like acrobats or aerial performers. And she would use this to show that they were like floating through the air almost. There's a lot of free-flowing space that would show opposition of darkness and light, beauty and destruction, love and hate, peacefulness and violence. There's a lot of fantasy worlds of balloons, planes, birds, flowers, carnival rides, but also bombs, strong colours, violence. She took her own photos of people, and often when she was travelling, and she would use those photographs in her work. Her current project is linked to the Mediterranean Sea. And can you imagine, if you're from Europe, no matter where you live, if you stand and look out at the Mediterranean, it's beautiful. You can swim in the sea, you can read, you can lie back and sunbathe on your holidays. It's a beautiful world to look out on. But an opposite opinion of it is a very dangerous place, the Mediterranean Sea. It causes a lot of panic and stress to people. It's very dangerous to cross. You could risk your life or die trying to cross it from the other side of Europe. And there's two very different views, and that's linked to Chloe's project now. And how it started was when she was on maternity leave and her son was breastfeeding. She was sitting at home one day watching the TV and she saw there was an ad from the Nurture Project. And that was about the supporting people who've become refugees, who have children, and they are in these refugees camps, but they have no supports whatsoever, emotional, medical, or so on. And Chloe realised herself she was very comfortable at home. She was very safe, she had food, shelter, and her baby was protected. They were fine. But these refugees, it must be a terrible, horrible, anxious life to live with so little. So she got in contact with the Nurture Project and said she'd be interested in being involved, and they agreed and flew her out to Greece. She met people in the camps who were just like her, mothers, and she discussed their stories. But there was one story that was horrible, and it was a woman called Hijra. She was from Iraq. She told Chloe her story and what happened to herself. She was living a very happy life, becoming a doctor. She was studying hard, soon to qualify, and her husband and her 3 children, and she was pregnant with the 4th when suddenly war broke out and everything was destroyed. Her husband disappeared, presumed to be killed by the bomb. She didn't know what to do with her 3 children. It wasn't safe to live here anymore. So they paid a smuggler to get them out of Europe, get them into Europe, and bring them on a boat there. So she realised it wasn't very safe for her and her 2 children to do this, but they had to. So she tied a rope around them and got onto the boat, and the idea in her head was, if something was to happen, if the boat capsized, at least they'd be together. They'd die together. And that's why she had the rope around all 4 of them. And it was lucky she did this, because when they got onto the boat, it did capsize. They fell off and none of them could swim. It was lucky that the rope was still attached to the boat and they were able to be saved and pulled back on. It was a huge relief. There was other people on that boat, and refugees as well, who were pregnant and had children and had to leave the crime of that island. And when Hijja explained her story to Chloe, it really impacted her. It was such an interesting story of a terrible time in that person's life. So when she went home, she was thinking on it. And she went for a walk one day and she found an old Lifebuoy ring. And when she saw it, she picked it up and thought, it's like the circle of life. Literally a symbol of a mother and a child, that connection that can never be broken. This circle, that connection, that love, just like a compass. Can you imagine a compass? It's just like a family. If they don't know what to do, they're together, no matter where they go in the world, north, south, east, west. They're all connected. So that's the start of this project. And that was the first painting that she did. And it continued on from there, that same linked to that project. And this is connected to the work she has at the moment, which is in the area of motherhood, what it's like to be an only mother, and childhood, what it's like to be an only child. Family, that continued relationship. and hopefully we will get to see that work very soon in an exhibition. We don't know when, but hopefully it will be in the near future.
Now I'm going to talk to you about Louis Le Brocquy. He was born in Dublin in 1916 and he died in 2012. He went to boarding school in St. Gerard's School in Bray. His interests in school and his academic level were average, and art wasn't a big interest of his. When he left school, he went to Trinity College in Dublin and he studied chemistry. He also worked with his grandfather, who had his own business involved with oil. Over time, he became interested in painting. His grandfather noticed he wasn't happy in his employment. His mother encouraged him to continue painting. When he graduated in 1938 from Trinity College, he took a boat to London. He went on to Paris and on to Geneva. And he went to those cities to view their galleries and study the work of the old masters, to absorb and glean and gain an understanding of their various styles. He became particularly interested in Goya, in his style of painting and his profile work, and in particular his use of greys and whites. As you will see later, that was one of the styles and typical series of work of Louis Le Brocquy. Louis Le Brocquy is one of the most influential Irish artists of the 20th century. His work became more and more personalised on the human condition and expression, and the quality of facial expression in particular. He is the only artist to have achieved the highest honour of being within the permanent Irish collection of art in the National Gallery of Ireland. Now I'm going to talk about his work. I'm going to show you some of his pieces. This painting is named A Family, painted by Louis Le Brocquy. It's an oil on canvas, painted in 1951. Before I tell you about this particular painting, as I mentioned previously, Louis Le Brocquy, when he left Ireland in 1938 and he travelled the cities of Europe, visiting galleries and museums and studying the old masters of art, it gave him and inspired him when it came to him doing his own paintings. One of the paintings that he saw in Paris in the Musée d'Orsay was named Olympia. In that painting, there was a family. The woman is lying on the side of the bed. Her servant is standing by the bed with flowers, and a cat rests at the end of the bed. So, taking elements of this painting, Louis Le Brocquy painted a family. I will show you the full painting at the end when I've finished explaining. In the painting, the father sits at the edge of the bed with his back turned to the rest of the family. Meanwhile, mother is leaning naked on the side of the bed, and her ribs are thin. At the end of the bed, out of reach of the father, and not touching the father, there's a little boy standing, holding flowers, gazing towards the mother. When we see the colours of the flowers speckled, they give a sense of hope. This painting represents feelings of loss and anxiety. It was painted depicting a scene after the war, World War II, where the atomic bomb had been dropped. It could be that this is a family sitting inside a bunker, waiting, hoping. The flowers are representational of keeping their spirits up and keeping hopeful. The painting uses a limited colour palette. The tones within the painting go from dark into light and dark again, really showing and setting the mood and the tone of what was happening with the family. And this shows in their facial expression also. Have a look at the full picture now. This painting is a watercolour, soft and gentle. The colours blend. While it is oil and canvas, it's thick. However, it still has that gentle lightness of palette also. Your attention is brought to the profile of the person. There's no sharp lines or dark lines. It's all gentle. Brocquy was inspired to paint this picture of a well-known writer. See if you can guess who. Have you guessed? This is W.B. Yeats, well-known Irish author. Similar to James Joyce, Samuel Beckett, Francis Bacon, and Seamus Heaney, and even Bono. They all had similar portraits painted like this. This was a series of portraits that Louis Le Brocquy continuously did. He would paint somebody's profile and then repaint it again and again and again to develop further, to show the personality of the person. I'll show you a series of paintings of W.B. Yeats, so you can see how Louis Le Brocquy was trying to capture the true essence of the personality in the profile picture. And Louis Le Brocquy knew W.B. Yeats very well. They knew each other through their families. And he wanted to bring his personality out in that portrait. Take a look. Enjoy.